Hey marketers, welcome to our second webinar in our series with live marketers from LinkedIn, live from the LinkedIn studio. You're watching the sweet spot of true measurement. And thank you so much to my guests that are here, Megan Golden of LinkedIn, Michael McEwen of AdStage. I wanted to let them introduce themselves quickly.
Alex, thank you so much for having us. I'm Michael McEwen. I'm the Director of Marketing at AdStage. We are a LinkedIn Marketing Solutions partner on the ad side. AdStage, in essence, we're a powerful self-serve platform that allows in-house marketers and digital agencies to optimize, automate, and report across all their search and social ad accounts all under one roof.
I'm Megan Golden, and I lead content strategy for LinkedIn Sales and Marketing Solutions. And so my team is responsible for helping sales and marketing professionals understand how to target, reach, and engage members on LinkedIn.
Awesome, and I realized that I didn't introduce myself for those who did not tune in for the first of these webinar series. My name is Alex Ray, and I lead the social media marketing strategy for LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. I also help oversee our blog and create a bunch of content to help marketers be more effective on our platform. So just so you guys can get to know our lovely panelists a little bit better, I was wondering if each of them could share something that is not on their LinkedIn profiles.
Certainly. So on my side, I'm constantly in kind of spreadsheets all the time. So to unplug, my birthday's actually coming up next weekend, and for every birthday, I like to kind of do some daredevil things and put my life at risk. So I'll be bungee jumping somewhere outside in like a little town in Reno. So pretty excited for it.
Nice.
Yes.
That's awesome. What about you, Megan?
Equally as extreme, I was part of the tap dancing competitive circuit in my youth. Lots of purple eyeshadow and sequins. So I've kept the sequins in my life, but I've gone away with the purple eyeshadow, thank God.
Awesome, thank goodness. And this is probably on my LinkedIn profile, but something I should probably share for context. Megan Golden is actually my boss, so I better be careful about what questions I ask
You're
her.
the boss this morning.
Yeah, not today.
Oh, all right, put me in the driver's seat. Cool. So a couple of housekeeping details I want to go over before we dive into the agenda. There's no dial-in, so all audio is heard through your computer speakers. Please ask all of your questions via the Q&A on the console. We're going to spend about 10 to 15 minutes at the end answering your questions here live, so get them ready. And then thirdly, we have some awesome resources in the console for you to check out afterwards. That's the crash course to metrics and analytics, and then our guide for solving ROI.
Which is awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right, so on to the agenda. We're going to baseline and talk about the difference between metrics and analytics. We're going to talk to these awesome marketers about what they define the sweet spot of true measurement to be and how their teams are embracing a full funnel marketing approach and what even full funnel marketing is these days. We're going to talk about what systems they use to enable measurement. We're going to talk about the important lower funnel metrics to analyze and how to effectively use LinkedIn Marketing Solutions in the lower funnel. And then we're also going to ask them a couple of fun questions afterwards so we can get them to know them a little bit better. And then there's also some poll questions for you guys as well so that you can be involved and we can understand who's tuned in a little bit better. So just setting the baseline, I think a lot of marketers think that metrics and analytics are the same thing and they use them pretty interchangeably. Although they're both important, they're not the same. So do you guys think you can deep dive into what they are and the difference?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that they get overused and overused incorrectly. But it's really important to leverage both of them to understand the uniqueness and how they play together. So metrics is really about what you use to measure your marketing's performance. And a lot of people refer to these as KPIs or key performance indicators. And then analytics is actually secondary. So then you take the metrics that you found to gauge your performance, and then you analyze them to identify the trends and patterns so that you can be more data-driven in your decision going forward and really understand the effectiveness of your marketing efforts.
Yeah, on that note, I find that a lot of marketers, and myself included in my kind of earlier years, get it confused where you might start with analytics. So you're in your web analytics and your bounce rate may have gone up a little bit. But does it really matter in the context of your business? So you spend all this time trying to fix things that may not actually impact. So I think when it comes down to it, it's defining which metrics actually impact your business, and then with analytics, understanding what the trends were over time, whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're going to turn it over to the audience. We're going to ask you our first poll question. So do you feel like your team can effectively prove the ROI of your marketing efforts? And your options for answers are A, yes, we've proven we're a revenue driver, not a cost center. B, somewhat, but we're not really sure how accurate the data is all the time. Or C, we still really need to show that we're contributing more. And we'll give you a couple of seconds to answer, and then we'll talk about the results.
I think it's a really interesting question because, especially with the answer, I think the second one was that you're not so confident in what you're seeing in terms of your data. And I think in my previous marketing lives, you are the victim of potentially dirty data, or in a marketing department that's changed processes so many times that what you're seeing in Salesforce or Marketo or Eloqua just makes zero sense anymore. And so I feel like lacking the confidence in the reporting is a very common factor.
Right. Sometimes you just inherit old Salesforce platforms.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on in there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see what our audience has to say. All right, so it looks like most people feel like they need to contribute more, but we still have a solid amount that feel like they are, somewhere between, but they're not sure the data is clean, which is, totally a valid point. So let's talk about how
I want to talk to those 10% people that says, yes, we've nailed it, we've got it. They should be sitting in these chairs.
Yeah, I mean, come on in, take the hot seat. I'd love to hear about how you guys are nailing it. But in the meantime, we're going to give everyone else tips on how to nail it. So, for both of you, the name of this webinar is Finding the Sweet Spot of True Measurement. How would you define the sweet spot of true measurement?
Yeah, I think the sweet spot of true measurement is really where the metrics are telling you how effective your programs are. And so to me, that means that you're focusing on a lot of the lower funnel metrics versus the upper funnel metrics that we like to call vanity metrics. So the likes and the shares and the clicks, and really focusing on the metrics that are going to be on the lower funnel and that are really going to show how fast and quickly and effectively customers are moving on to be customers.
Certainly agree there, and I think it's just more on when you look up the executive level, everybody's talking in the same language. So for sales, they always talk about things like what actually impacts the business, things like opportunity, revenue on the CS side, things like churn. And so marketing actually aligning towards those metrics. Instead of speaking so much marketing jargon, talk about how your programs are actually impacting things for the business as a whole.
I think that's a really good point, that marketing can't have the sweet spot of metrics on an island. Those sweet spot of metrics really have to be paired and aligned with the sales teams.
Definitely.
Yeah, so if the sweet spots are the metrics that are showing how effective marketers or programs are, then how do you roll up those metrics and communicate them up to the people that are interested to hear it?
I feel like I'm dominating this conversation right now, but I just want to answer this really quickly. So I think that we have our marketing teams, right? They're 5, 10, 15 people, and you have all this access to all this different data from different platforms. And so you scoop all the data and you kind of put it into a semi-sexy PowerPoint and then, volley it up to the executives. And they're like, I don't really know what's the story you're telling me? How is this really driving business impact? So I think that what we have to do as marketers is really geek out on all the data, but also understand what your executives care about and really highlight that as your strong story. So they're not going to really care about the number of downloads, but they are going to care about how those downloads are converting to MQLs, converting to sales accepted opportunities, and to bookings.
So Megan, you mentioned dirty data, right? So I think for me that
don't hash that
real sweet spot is first defining what is your single lens of truth, and usually that's a system. So for us, it's the CRM. Then you're thinking about your campaigns on how do I pass the MarTech landscape's 5,000 plus vendors right now. How do I pass my different systems data and connect it all together where it comes to my CRM, and I can look in my CRM and say, okay, now I understand overall this channel's effective or this one's not, or even this holistic campaign's going there. Until you've really defined how to get it into one single place, you're going to constantly be cobbling together different reports at different systems, and then, as you said, kind of work it together in a PowerPoint.
Yeah, good point.
So a quick follow-up question for Megan. You mentioned that your PowerPoints can be sexy. How does one make a PowerPoint sexy?
Lots of dense text.
No. All right.
Do you want me to answer that? No.
No. Just messing with you.
That's
All right.
secret sauce.
Yeah. Moving on, both of you guys mentioned the lower funnel. So perhaps, just to baseline with the audience again, can you talk a little bit more about the notion of full funnel marketing? I know that I've heard a lot of conversations recently about how the funnel has changed and it's leaking or it's broken. So is it broken? What does it look like? What is full funnel marketing?
So to me, I don't think the funnel is necessarily broken. I think it's just highly inefficient. So Forrester cited something like only 2% or less of marketing leads actually turn into closed won business. So that's an issue. I think for us, where we initially started, we only could track up to what we could. So before like your CRM, your marketing automation system talked, really you were just optimizing for form fills. So as marketers, we would always do like the MQLs, like the leads, right? Fast forward, and you may have increased leads a ton. You go back to your sales team, and they're not getting any new opportunities, or they find that the actual quality is really poor. So full funnel marketing to me is really getting all the teams aligned and having like a full vision of what actually with marketing had an impact, either like as an assist or a direct point to an opportunity or closed won customer.
Right, and then just for the audience, an MQL is a marketing qualified lead.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think too, it's really, as a marketer, ensuring that you are control of the way you're educating your prospects throughout the entire journey. And it's not necessarily a list of tactics like I'm going to send an email and then I'm going to do a webinar. It's really about asking yourself, am I prompting increasingly more relevant content the more I know about this prospect? What happens after the sale? Am I serving them content that's going to make them a successful customer? Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the number of acquisitions you have. It's really about the number of quality customers that are going to invest in your company.
And I've actually seen like the team structure change from that too. You used to have your social media person, they would kind of have their own content calendar. You'd have your content marketer, they'd have their own content calendar as well. Then you have your paid marketer who's kind of, doing banner ads.
Right.
And none of those actually consistently told a story for like the consumer or your customer. And so the full funnel marketing is sitting the teams down and saying strategically, at each step, how can we work together and how can we get the person to the next stage?
Right, exactly. And even that stage being, so how does our content marketing affect, post-booking to make them really healthy customers?
So yeah, on that notion, I was curious, Megan,
you're the
with
boss
LinkedIn,
now?
No, LinkedIn's own lens. I was just like, so I think you guys from LinkedIn always do such a phenomenal job of like B2B marketing. So I was curious, kind of like after someone becomes a customer, like LinkedIn ads, for example, what then is that process? LinkedIn, so kind of post.
Yeah, there's, like you said, there's so many content marketers across all different orgs within companies now because, there's so many different ways to get your voice and brand out there. For us, we really pivoted towards this more how-to content, this very prescription-based content. So we pivoted a little bit away from thought leadership because we saw that it was really resonating with customers to understand tactically how to execute on LinkedIn. And so with the LinkedIn Tactical Plan, that was where we took, it was kind of dual purpose in the sense that it really brought top funnel prospects down the funnel because it was talking about high-level content marketing strategy, but also how a content marketing strategy would look on LinkedIn. Ideally, you would want that sort of start to ideate about that before becoming a customer, so it makes sense that it's in that top to mid-funnel attraction. And then the book also went all the way down to how do you set up a campaign, how much time you should be spending with each product feature. And so that's stuff that I think is really great for the customer, but also great for pushing the prospect across the finish line in terms of a booking. So that's sort of how we affect customer marketing in terms of educating customers and helping them adopt and be more successful on the platform. But then we also have this separate org called content marketing evangelists. And these are basically what at another company you would call a customer success rep. And so they use content marketing to really help our customers. It's kind of like Inception because we're content marketing, talking about content marketing to content marketers. And so their job is to really work with our customers to adopt really successful content marketing strategies and specifically how they relate to their business model. So we're not giving sort of this blanket content marketing approach. They're kind of going in and auditing and prescribing the right strategy, and then really educating them on how that strategy can come to life on the LinkedIn platform. So those are just like 2 ways that we do it. I know that there's a lot of different business units within LinkedIn that do content marketing, but that's sort of how we think about still maintaining engagement with the customer after acquisition.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure that our audience really appreciated that inside look into how we do things. So now that we've kind of discussed full funnel marketing a little bit, I'm going to send the audience another poll question. So how would you rate your team's effectiveness at full funnel marketing? So basically, do you feel like you're effectively engaging with your prospects throughout the entire journey? And your answer options are A, we're rock stars, we're killing it, we know what we're doing. B, we're still learning, aren't we all? And then C, we're beginners with a lot to learn. So this is a tough one. I mean, we're going to let you guys answer, give you a couple seconds, talk about the results. But, I think it's a tough one because, as we say at LinkedIn, you should always be learning. So the buyer's journey is changing. And I don't know if you can, say that you're being a rock star all the time. But
I think you could be one of the most talented marketers in the world, know your marketing automation triggers, be a great content marketer. But until you actually go through that funnel yourself and you diagnose, you'll just reveal things like messaging, timing, or even what you're revealing at particular stages of the journey can be eye-opening. So I think for myself, even though I've been in the game for a while, it's always learning and constantly trying to iterate and tweak things.
Yep, definitely. All right, let's see what you guys said. So it looks like most people are in the still learning, but followed closely by beginners. Again, there's 4% that are rock stars. I want to meet you.
Yeah.
So great. So for the people that are still learning, I know it's a lot of them out there. Can you both tell us a little bit, given this new funnel, how your team embraces a full funnel marketing approach?
So on our side, we had to kind of reimagine things for a long period of time. And heavy acquisition marketer, it was kind of like a high five off to sales when the demo happened, right? And so now to sit back and look at the team of, we're being held to revenue. I have to go to my CEO and say, that money you gave me for either headcount or budget for certain things, I have to prove back to you why that was a good investment.
Yeah.
So the approach from our team has been really to sit down with the different departments and make a playbook. So at what time does sales get introduced? Mm-hmm. How is their outreach versus ours?
Great.
When CS comes there and they become a customer, how we play with them as well. And so once we had that playbook, I'll give you an example of kind of a full funnel campaign we had. We released this product within AdStage called Automate that allows marketers to take any of their social or search or social campaigns and monitor them 24/7 or actually make optimizations at nighttime or when they're sleeping or across the day, because it's very hard to do manually. We were finding that it wasn't having high adoption. We were wondering, is it a product problem? The more we actually polled customers and users of it, we found that it was actually higher than that. So they were grappling, what is automation?
Yeah.
How does it fit within my organization? Why should I use that versus my old trusted manual approach or Excel?
Right.
So then we kind of recrafted our whole full funnel approach where at the top of funnel, the low friction content, we explain to them what automation is, why it's great for their business, then later introduce more of the product features, and then working with sales and CS on how do we get them on board with kind of templates and use cases where they feel very confident. So for us, is kind of reimagining that funnel from the ground up, understanding what the true root cause was, and then going back and recrafting our strategy.
And I think that's exactly the prime example of a sweet spot, is that finding finding the why, right? And then adjusting, right? Because you guys definitely found the why, and then there was a pivot that happened for you guys to become even more effective.
Definitely. And then do you happen to have an example of?
I think I used mine earlier. I think I was so excited to tell about the content or the tactical plan.
Oh, okay.
So I'm
right.
fresh out of ideas.
Yeah. All right. No, that's great. That works perfectly. All right, so circling back to the sweet spot, specifically what are those sweet spot metrics that can help marketers be more effective at achieving their business goals?
Yeah, I think that we've kind of pounded this in already throughout the webcast, but it really is those lower funnel metrics, and you can elaborate on your experience, Mike, as well. But it's really watching those conversion rates going from an MQL, and even really how you qualify an MQL in the beginning is really important. But then how, based on that qualification, are they moving at the rate that they should through to a sales accepted opportunity, to a booking, and to become a really quality customer.
100%. So as you mentioned, like your end goal might be opportunities opened or closed won revenue, but you have to track it back to all the steps you can control. So as you mentioned with the marketing qualified lead, someone enters their form, maybe it's not ready to pass to sales yet. So you could sit down with sales and say, what is that definition? And then is it ready? And you're starting to look at how many of my marketing qualified leads or form fills actually turned into a demo or an opportunity. And once you get that funnel metrics down, then you kind of know what to tweak in the organization.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what systems do you use to enable this type of measurement?
What systems don't we use? I think this is
sure.
you.
On the systems, I would agree. I probably have more point solutions than I can name, but overall your big ones are your web analytics, your marketing automation system that includes things like your email, your form, and your landing page elements. In addition to that, you have like things like events and those kind of pieces, but it's really bringing all those kind of into your CRM and passing those along. So the big ones are, your analytics, marketing automation, past the CRM for us.
And I would say that, for like a lean operation, like, having a Google Analytics in place is super important, right? That's free. And then sort of growing up, you're adolescent, then you're into your marketing automation tool, your Eloqua or your Marketo. And that's where, people decide whether or not they're going to do last touch attribution, first touch, or be mega sophisticated and do multi-touch. And then, you're kind of going to college and now you're in your Salesforce and you're really pimping out your Salesforce instance to understand like how those leads are converting and potentially how Eloqua is nurturing them to successfully move down the funnel, and then how your sales team is engaging with those opportunities and how that's really affecting the conversion rate as well.
I would say there that a lot of marketers will buy something new and shiny and they don't quite understand organizationally where it fits. Like you need to know that when you set up marketing automation, it's not going to do all your marketing for you. You're going to need someone behind that, and you need to understand how all your systems play together. Otherwise, you get back to that murky data.
And I think that's something that we've maybe talked about on previous webinars, or that I think upcoming. But that sort of like marketing ecosystem nirvana that's so hard to get to, but is super important in order for you to really get that confidence that we talked about earlier in terms of understanding the effectiveness.
Yeah. Definitely. So once you have these insights from the sweet spot metrics that we've been discussing, how do you leverage them to drive ROI?
Yeah. So I think it's all about coming back to knowing or understanding your ad spend as it correlates to those metrics. And so ideally I would love to see ad spend against booking numbers on demand. But because sales cycles are often, 2 months, 6 months, you kind of have to move up the funnel a little bit to be able to, understand effectiveness that will ideally waterfall down to helping bookings. So that sounded like a lot of gibberish just then. But so if you take a look at your number of MQLs and you divide them by ad spend, then you have your cost per MQL, and then you move down the funnel and you take your number of opportunities divided by ad spend, and then you have your cost per opportunity. And I think looking at those middle funnel metrics will help you affect the effectiveness of your ROI down the road for companies who don't have a transactional model and have a sales cycle that's longer than just a week or whatnot.
B2B is hard.
B2B is hard.
You have e-commerce, which the transaction happens almost instantly. You can see it all online. You have all those touch points.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, with like the longer sales cycles, you have sales reaching out, you have physical events. It can be very difficult. So with that, it's just going back into the metrics that you have. So a lot of people, marketers are hyper focused on just adding new names to their database.
Yeah.
But really, it's about like going into your database and understanding like what you have to work with, how many might be a good opportunity, and then working those down the funnel as well.
Totally.
And we've touched on this a little bit, but what other programs or marketing tactics are typically found in the lower funnel that you guys keep your eye on?
I mean, if you think about the objective of a lower funnel is all about like improving lead quality and ultimately driving conversions all the way down to bookings, you're going to look at those lower funnel tactics that are like email nurtures and webinars and demos and long form content. That's sort of top of mind to me. What about you?
100%. So I think it's by that time, hopefully they know of your brand and solution to some degree. And so that's where some of the more catered, personalized pieces. So you said email. In addition to that, you kind of have advertising, so they know you. So you're no longer kind of packaging that top of funnel content. It's much more kind of about your solution in the consideration phase. And then, as you mentioned as well, things like webinars and demos play very well.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this before, like a bucket of tactics. I think that you can be a little bit more strategic in how you approach the tactics. So, for instance, depending on their initial download of content they were interested in, you prompt them email, nurture, and webinars on similar topics, so that you're basically, continuing that waterfall of education on the initial interest that piqued their interest in the beginning.
And then, moving on from that, how do you effectively use LinkedIn marketing solutions in the lower funnel? Can you give examples from your teams?
So I think for me, the contact matching that just came out from LinkedIn is a huge, exciting opportunity. So when you're talking about lower funnel metrics, you're not so much worried about those acquisition campaigns. You already have them in your database. So it's taking them based on maybe the company size or the potential. So if they're a good fit for your service, or just kind of things like interactive rates, or what sales have said, these are the ones we should go after, and then matching them on LinkedIn, and then using solutions such as direct sponsored content to get them direct to something like a demo, or actually broadening your reach by using the different solutions. So you could be running an in-mail campaign in addition to something like sponsored content.
Right.
Do you work for LinkedIn?
I know. Perfect answer.
To piggyback on your sponsored content and sponsored in-mail notion. So in one of our most recent pieces of content, the secret sauce, we kind of unveiled a bunch of results from A/B testing that we had done throughout our product, because we market on LinkedIn. And one of the things that we found out is that when we launched a campaign that had a dual strategy of having both sponsored in-mail, which is basically email within LinkedIn, and sponsored content, which members find in their feed, if we did that in tandem, we increased the open rate of the in-mail by 25% and the conversion rate by 25%. That's a significant number.
Huge lift.
So it's not necessarily about using the one-off feature, but how do they work better together? Second is that with LinkedIn's conversion tracking, you can really understand the value of marketing on LinkedIn and really understand the ROI, and really be able to understand then how to optimize for better results. So you can track leads from LinkedIn Campaign Manager, everything from cost per lead to sales qualified leads. I feel like if I had $1 for every time I said sales qualified lead or opportunity, I'd have $6.
We'll get you a jar.
All the way down to actually the revenue per opportunity. And so understanding the ROI directly within LinkedIn Campaign Manager, and then understanding how to optimize based on the results so that you can continue to just kill it.
Awesome. So kind of, wrapping up everything that we've talked about, we've covered a lot in a short amount of time. So if you just have before we jump into the just for fun section, just general takeaways, high level takeaways from everything that we've discussed for our audience.
Take it away, Mike.
So I think takeaways for me is relating metrics from the marketing side, and then just leaning it up and really speaking towards more of an executive level. So that's how you're going to get your budget approved. That's how you're going to provide your impact, is saying marketing did this. So your executive is not going to care so much about things like click-through rates or fan growth. There's stuff that we really geek out on and we love to talk about internally, but it's rolling up and providing that impact. And I think it also is about uniting the teams. So working with sales to set those universal definitions. So when you talk about a metric like a sales qualified lead, when that, or an opportunity, what does that actually mean within your organization? Because I think we could go around to each marketer and they'd have a different version of that for their business.
Yeah, I think that's one of our next webcasts is the benefits of the sales and marketing alignment and how critical it is.
Yes.
I think that one takeaway that I would give to people is that give yourself credit that this is all very challenging. It's challenging for multiple reasons. It's challenging because data sometimes isn't 100% accurate. It's challenging because we've been so used to those sort of superficial metrics, and so now we're being asked to give these really hard to get metrics to prove value. And I think that we should sort of rethink the way that we spend time and look at metrics. So it's not just about launching a campaign and then spending 20 minutes looking back at performance. It's about launching a campaign and knowing that part of that campaign is going to be time carved out to prove how effective it is, and to really think about past the launch and think how understanding how it's doing is really going to help you fuel the launch for the time going forward to further optimize it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think that a lot of teams spend a lot of time on content creation and distribution, and they don't take the time to look at the metrics and analytics afterwards, and they're just so excited about like the next thing. But even just like in terms of like campaign creation and distribution, it's like you should spend like 20% of your time creating it, and like 80% distributing, and then a lot more time
optimizing
afterwards.
I would say overall, like it's completely changed my lens on content strategy. So I used to like be very big on like the big white paper or the vanity blog posts that got a ton of shares or a ton of downloads. But you might find that a lot of those people were not interested in your solution, or maybe it wasn't addressing the right pain points. It was like way too high level.
Yeah.
There still is a place for that. When we started like recrafting our content based on like what our ideal customer profile was like, and trying to understand their pain solutions, like you may not get as much volume, but at the end of the day, it's actually a better piece of content to help someone inform why they should have your solution.
Yeah.
And I think we're going on a bit of a tangent, but is that okay, boss?
Yep. Go for it. You're the real boss.
I think that your notion about like it used to be sort of this big bang approach where it's like, we want to own this conversation in the market, and here's our big, massive ebook that's going to do it. And I think that what we've learned is that sort of testing and experimenting with narratives and ideas is really important, and hence, for instance, we had this proof campaign, hence this proof webinar series, that really, while maybe the market's only known about it for a couple months, we started testing this back in November with pulling content together that was already existing, reshaping it in a new narrative, and throwing it to the market to see, is there an appetite for this conversation before we really dive deep into it. And so we were able to kind of iterate on this smaller scale that wasn't so risky, so that we iterated to a point where we felt really confident to then totally blow it out of the water for the full-blown campaign in 2017. Always be testing is what Alex tells me.
Always. Yeah, we have a whole ebook about it, all of our A/B tests. Definitely go check it out on the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions blog. That's my plug.
You're a very good plugger. I was going to say.
It's my one plug. It seemed very natural though, right? Okay, so now we're going to move on to questions just for fun. What is your one desert island metric? If you were stuck on an island, you can't bring water or wine, you get to bring one metric. What would you take?
I think I would take customer lifetime value. I think that as sort of the B2B world grows and the SaaS model becomes even more prevalent than it is, it's all about retaining those customers and retaining customers that are going to continue to invest in you. And so with customer lifetime value, understanding sort of the predictions of how valuable a customer is going to be to your business is really more important than just the dollar sign on the original contract.
100%. So I would just dovetail that to say like the payback ratio. So it's like lifetime value divided by CAC, and then figuring out what that ratio is. So what was your actual return from your campaigns?
Okay.
Can you talk about that acronym you just said?
Sorry, a cost per acquired customer.
Oh, great.
So you're really just taking how much was this customer worth versus how much did it take for us to get that customer in the door, right? And so you look at that and you're saying, like, was it a positive or a negative ROI? And it just is like a multiplier effect. So like, hey, every time we spend $1 on advertising, for example, we're going to get $3 back from it. It would be the ideal golden rule.
Okay, awesome.
It's funny, too, that like in this it just proves that we're in this sort of customer-centric world when our metrics that we're really reliant on are like customer related. It's not just about the bookings number or the revenue number.
Yeah, exactly. What keeps you awake at night?
I can say
as a director of marketing, as a content lead at LinkedIn.
I think what keeps me awake at night is when you have the data, but you still have to make those kind of gut calls. When you have a big budget and there's like a lot of pressure riding on it, I think it's just actually signing that line and saying, okay, I have indicators telling me this is going to be a good one, but you don't really know.
Yeah.
That for me keeps me awake at night.
And you're usually asking people to follow you too. You're like, everybody come along with this idea.
Yeah. I mean, people say you should be like data driven but gut led.
Yeah.
So I totally get that.
Yeah. I think for me, mine isn't necessarily related to, I can't look at Alex when I say this one. Not necessarily related to being a content marketer, but related to being a manager. I am so lucky to have the best content marketing team in the world. I'm sure you have one too. But it's really, are they feeling passionate about what they're doing every day? Do they feel empowered to bring their best ideas? Are they having fun? I know that's really cheesy, but that's a big piece of our culture at LinkedIn is sort of, getting shit done, but having fun. And so having a team that can really rally behind fun and execution, those are the things that, because, we have to do a lot of things and perform a lot of things and do things like this that stress us out. And I think just making sure that my team is happy along the way and feeling inspired, I think is really important to me. And sometimes, it stresses you out that, to keep doing that.
So did you just agree to this webinar so that I could hear you say that on live air?
That's the only reason why I hear it.
Good to know. Well, that is lovely. That means a lot to me and the content marketing team. All right, so most annoying industry buzzwords.
Omnichannel for me.
Oh, omnichannel.
I get that all the time.
Yeah,
and it's not so much like a buzzword, but the term right message at the right time.
Yeah.
That one is to me.
Yeah. It's just very overused.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we were kind of talking about this morning, and this is kind of lame, but I think best practices is totally another word that's very, very overused. And I know that, we try to not do it in our content, but don't go audit our content because it's probably there. But, we as marketers should be better marketers in terms of defining the better way to do things outside of best practices. That's so basic and vanilla.
We need to find other ways to say that.
Yeah. If somebody on the line or wants to tell us how to replace best practices, you'll win.
We should have people
swag.
Call in. How cool would that be?
Yeah.
I loved, not to go off topic, but there's a company called Drift out there, and they had this big revelation of, we know it's best practice to gate our content because you get leads in the database, and we're not going to do that. We believe in the power of content. We're going to open it up, and from there, when people read and share and consume that, we believe that they're going to inquire about our product, and it actually worked for them. So I think when you do best practices and you only get your mindset into that, you don't quite see that maybe it's not actually best for the customer journey, or maybe there's just different ways of approaching things.
Yeah, and our team has kind of taken that approach a little bit as well. I mean, we've, we're still producing PDFs, but we're kind of breaking our marriage to it and instead trying to focus on creating these online experiences for our customers. Because, you have to, in order to market to marketers, you have to think like a marketer. And as a marketer, I don't necessarily like filling out forms.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
So you just have to put yourself in the mindset.
But it's also scary as a marketer to be like,
right,
just giving it away this for free?
Yeah.
That's very true.
I need to prove the value of this content, and the only value is if you give me your name. So it's forcing us to kind of figure out ways to define successful content without that gate, and we're still trying to figure it out.
We're still trying to figure it out. As I think, Drift is, a lot of companies are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the biggest change you've seen in marketing measurement and how your team has adjusted.
So I think the big change is, marketing, there's still a huge component to brand, right? But in the early days, there wasn't much force of hand on marketing to actually prove their worth. So a lot of times it was just, we did these high gloss things, these big touch events, but we didn't actually have to, at the end of the day, come back and say, this is the hard ROI. And you're starting to get that more. And sometimes, as you guys were mentioning, the data is murky, or maybe we didn't think about how our systems talk to one another, and now we have to kind of come back and say, okay, scratch our heads, how do we approach this? Because it's not always so clear. But I think through this webinar, we at least kind of went over the building blocks to get you there. So for me, I think that's the most challenging but biggest opportunity is marketers have more budget now, starting to get a little bit more responsibility and headcount. But we also have a high pressure on ourselves to perform, much like sales.
That's it?
Well, I mean, that's pretty spot on.
She's stressing about it herself. I'll go through this.
I mean, no. I think it's if the question is, what's the biggest change in measurement and how is your team embracing it? I mean, that's why we're here today, and that's why we're talking about the things that we are, because we're struggling with this ourselves. And so if we're struggling with it, we're figuring that a lot of people in our audience are struggling with it, and it's all about, like we said, finding the time, prioritizing the time to spend with metrics and make the right analysis that are really going to matter to your executives.
Awesome. One more just for fun, then we're going to move on to Q&A, so don't forget to submit your questions in the console. We already have a couple that I see, which is awesome. I'm excited to answer them. But who should play you in the movie version of your life? And maybe why, if you're like going to be bold about it.
I think me, it's less about personality and more than I'm just historically known. So, I come to the office very polished during the day, and just throughout the day, my hair gets really crazy, get untucked. So I think Chris Farley at the end of the day can play that very well. So that's what I'd say on my end.
That's a hard act to follow. Chris Farley, rest in peace. So I wasn't even thinking about personality. I was just thinking about looks.
So shallow.
Amanda said Reese Witherspoon last week, so she kind of stole the thunder. My second blonde crush would probably be January Jones, aka Betty in Mad Men.
Oh yeah.
I can see that totally. Well, thank you for entertaining my marketing-related questions. Now we're going to move on to Q&A. So let's see what we've got. Our team is just starting out. We're super scrappy, not a whole ton of budget. What are the very basic systems you need in place to start tracking towards the sweet spot? Just the basics. I know you guys mentioned a couple, but I mean, I know Google Analytics is good because it's free, so that might be like a starting point.
Well, you got to have that to really understand the effectiveness of your website, and that's basically your baseline marketing. It's your brochure. You mentioned the next graduated step would be to have some sort of like landing page builder or email marketing tool. And then, for really to understand the lead flow, I think Salesforce is important. And I think Salesforce is typically a pretty easy sell internally because it's not just for the marketing team. It spans across a ton of other orgs, obviously sales, sometimes customer success, and marketing.
All right. What's the difference between ROI and cost per acquired customer?
So cost per acquired customer is just all-in costs. So you typically don't include things like salaries necessarily, but you would include things and tools to get people there, plus things like ad spend. And you come down in things like sales commissions, and you'd say, okay, overall, this is how much it costs me to get that customer. Return on investment is a little bit different because you're taking out all those costs. You're saying, okay, my sale was $10,000, but maybe it took me $3,000 to acquire that customer all in. And so my ROI, like my return from my investment, is $7,000. Just breaking it down very simply. So when you're looking at ROI, it's just kind of the net effect when you take out all your costs and how much that sale was.
Okay, that makes sense. I hope that we answered your question. Can you speak more to the dangers of optimizing for clicks rather than conversions?
I think you had an excellent answer when we rehearsed.
So clicks at the end of the day are like a good indicator, but it's not going to actually perhaps even impact the business, right? So you might run a campaign and that could be really bad traffic, or maybe it was a landing page experience. So click is actually not a great indicator. Conversions are your desired goal. So it might be something like a form fill. So if you're optimizing towards your desired goal, you're going to get better effects out of that. Where if you're just looking at kind of the surface level metrics like traffic, you're likely going to be spending, you're going to be optimizing to try to get as much traffic for the lowest amount of cost. Sometimes it's okay to pay more for the right type of prospect. It's probably why they cost more, to get them to your site and to get them to convert and talk to sales.
Well, and I think it's smart of you to think that not every lead is not every download is gonna be a lead. You gotta have in place a lead score model or a propensity model that really filters out the noise and really pulls in and attracts the most interested and most qualified.
And Megan, I know we were talking about this earlier. You guys actually are either ambitious enough or even crazy enough to build your own model internally at LinkedIn, which I thought was pretty amazing.
Yes, I was not the person in charge of this or the mastermind behind it, but on our demand gen team, actually Amanda, who was on the show last week, I don't know why I'm pointing with this. Anyway, she worked very diligently with the field and the sales rep to understand what a marketing qualified lead would look like based on tons of different attribution and based on activity that they had within our content, on our website. And so they agreed upon what that propensity model would be and what it looks like in order to filter out the the unqualified, or not necessarily unqualified, but maybe not ready yet, and then the filtered in the quality leads. And so they agreed upon what that looked like and then built it all out internally on the back end. So yeah, very impressive by the demand gen team.
That's awesome.
Awesome. We talked about lower funnel quite a bit. What are some useful metrics for measuring effectiveness at the upper funnel, top of the funnel?
Well, you're the content queen here, but I think overall, when you're looking at top of funnel content, you're wanting to know if the content you're producing is being engaged with. Like, so you're starting with things like, of your target pool, like how many people are you reaching with that, for things like with advertising. So sponsored content's a great one of that. You have an audience. How big is your reach? How many people are visiting the site? Is the content being shared? And then that will help kind of inform your content strategy at the top of funnel.
And I think too, your top of funnel content is also going to help drive your SEO, right? And so that can help you understand awareness through understanding like brand lift. Are people Googling your products or your brand more? Is that lifting? Are people coming to your website more? And so it also can have a big SEO play as well.
Are people subscribing to your blog? Are people opting
Exactly.
into your whatever, your email, newsletter, etc.? Okay, great. Moving on. Let's see what else we got. This is an interesting one. As a marketer, do you love to win or hate to lose? You can't be both. This is from Andrew.
I would say both, though, because in both situations, I'm always trying to win. And if our team falls short of that, of course, at first you kind of take it. But the more that you can kind of look at it as a learning lesson and adjust your strategy. So I think that's the great thing about marketing is, yes, you may not get that time or those dollars back, but it only makes you more smart when you go to that next campaign and apply those lessons learned. When we talk about gut instincts, it's because we ran so many campaigns, you found ones that are duds. And then from that's where you kind of get that gut instinct, but really it's just lessons learned over time.
And I think it's cheesy, but that sort of fear to fail mentality gets you nowhere.
Definitely.
Yeah. And we're lucky at LinkedIn that they kind of like foster that sense of like it's okay to fail and like failing forward. So we do that a lot. We take what we call intelligent risks, and if there's enough data behind it, we just run with it. And not everything we do is a home run, but we learn from everything. So that's kind of our mentality there. All right. Is measurement? We have time for a couple more. Then we're gonna close out. But is measurement of effectiveness different for targeted marketing versus general marketing?
So. Isn't all marketing targeted marketing? Or at least it should be.
Touché. I agree with that.
I would say the only difference might be where they are in the funnel, right? So if you have targeted marketing, you may have a different approach for acquisition, but if they're already in your database, you're no longer looking at a metric like cost per lead, right? So now you're starting to think about things of, are they engaging with your content, and then are they taking kind of next steps there?
This question, I'm going to take this question if that's okay with you guys.
Please.
Feel free to add on though. Jacob asks, what's the best way to grow a faithful following base on a new LinkedIn company page?
Did you put this question to yourself?
No, but it's funny because I'm in the process of writing my latest ebook, which is the LinkedIn company page playbook coming out in June. And it's all about the new LinkedIn company page experience and the analytics and everything you can do to grow your base, and how we've grown our showcase page, because there's a LinkedIn company page, and then we have our marketing solutions showcase page, which is separate, so we had to build our own following. But I think posting consistently, posting content that's kind of like a mix of objectives, so like a brand awareness play, a thought leadership play, a lead generation play, sharing links to your greatest nicely designed ebooks and white papers, posting third-party content because no one wants to be at the party who's just talking about themselves the whole time. Plus that shows that what's going on in the industry. And I think using really eye-catching imagery. So the right-sized imagery to use on LinkedIn is 1200 by 627 pixels. That's everyone write that down. And I think our team does a lot of A/B testing. So we use direct sponsored content to A/B test everything. Whenever we run a campaign, we make, like 5 to 10 different images based on that ebook or whatever it is, and we pull out interesting infographics or stats, stuff that might resonate with our audience, and we test it and we see what people like best, and that's kind of how we've learned. And I can't really tell you, exactly what to do because every audience is different, but you can test it for yourself and see how it works out for you. I think those are my main tips. Do you guys have anything to add?
No.
I think you covered very well.
Okay. Thanks. This one's for Megan. What both are, definitely can answer. How do you figure out what content resonates with what audience?
Yeah, I think that testing, there's no way to really know. I think that you can also do a little bit of research that'll help drive that initial perception. Research can be, keyword research, understanding, what they're reading, what publications they frequent. A lot of stuff you can find this on LinkedIn, what groups that they're following to understand what they're interested in. There's also this interesting website called Answer the Public?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very cool website to understand all the sort of subsidiary topics around an umbrella topic, and so that can actually help fuel what types of content in terms of topics would relate to a certain persona or industry.
Awesome. There's another follow-up question about company pages asking how often you should be posting. Again, I think this is specific to your audience, but when you're starting out, maybe once or twice a day, then as you kind of build your following a little bit, then like 3 to 4 times a day. But it depends, how much content you're pushing out. Like, what are you putting on your blog? Are you sharing that on your showcase page? Like, don't just share content to share content because you want to make sure it's as relevant as possible. And then, to Megan's point about testing, I think if you're hesitant to start spending right away, you can just see what's performing well organically and then give that a boost. I think that's a tactic that's worked really well for us when we were starting out with our showcase page. All right, let me see. We might have time for one more. Let's see. How do you think measurement varies from industry to industry? I'm from a corporate background, but now I'm in a nonprofit world. What's the best way to effectively set up a realistic system to measure results?
I think even though it's different industries and that might be more B2C, like with nonprofits, the approach and the foundations are still very similar. What are you trying to track? How are you going to go about tracking that, breaking down the steps, and then what systems are going to use or what type of content makes sense at each one of those? You just may find that in the nonprofit, perhaps like you have a leaner funnel, where B2B has like a lot more sales touches. This one might be just like general awareness of things going on, getting people kind of emotionally involved with that. So I think in that particular case, email might be a great medium for the nonprofit.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope that helped. Final question, and then we'll close out. Can you speak to a specific example when you used data or metrics analytics to optimize a campaign that's either it's already in flux or start a new campaign?
So as far as like using, I think as you mentioned, we a lot of times will find that particular pieces of content for whatever reason get picked up organically. And so you're looking at things and then okay, this is the time to sponsor it. So we just happen to have, we looked at what users are looking at, like things like Quora. We answered a particular question and somehow we got in like the Google answer box for that particular piece, and we know this is hot. So from those metrics, we could see a spike on that piece of content organically and say, okay, now is the time to go and promote it. And from there, we got quite a bit of activity still today. I think that, pieces from like 2014.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've noticed that a lot of like our evergreen content from several years ago will continue to always outperform. It's probably also because it's like our flagship content too. In terms of what I've learned from or how I've used data to make a decision, right? Is that the question?
Yeah, like if you had a campaign that was running and you noticed something, some kind of data-driven decision you made to start a new campaign or make a change.
So I was actually on a webinar recently with Cassandra, who will be on this next week or in a couple weeks, and it was around metrics, and we were talking about how she goes in and sort of looks at all of the campaigns, and then it's the list of campaigns on the left, and then the right is like sort of the top to lower funnel metrics as sort of it moves down. And we were like, okay, well let's pull out the most high performing campaign for this webinar and talk about that. And so we pulled and extracted the campaign. And then when we actually drilled down to it, we saw that like the conversion rate was extremely low, but it was getting all of these downloads. And so we went back and sort of changed the lens that we had on the data. And instead of looking initially at those downloads, we went all the way to the right to see what the conversion rate was and really use that as the key indicator as what a successful campaign was.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for both of you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
to our audience so much for tuning in. I hope that this was helpful. And don't forget to tune in to the next webinar in our Proof series, which is happening on May 31st. And we have a special guest, Cassandra Clark, a demand gen marketer from LinkedIn, and then Marcus Andrews, product marketing manager at HubSpot. So thanks again for tuning in and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.